welfare. All I can say is that every time a big truck drives by with pigs inside of it, I do cry, and they look very sad.
Can you tell me what the Farm Bill is?
Nope. Farm Bill? Yeah, nope.
Animal welfare? Well, I assume that's when an animal family is below the poverty line and receives additional support from the government. So the Farm Bill is the man who has worked on the farm for 80 years.
Tell me, what do you know about Proposition 12 in California?
Oh, nothing. I know nothing about that. I'm so sorry. Animal welfare, like how they take care of the animals. You know, agricultural and food things.
I don't know what the Farm Bill is.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the CAP podcast. My name is Sydney Schnorr. Today we are going to be exploring animal welfare from a different perspective from our two lovely students, Hannah and Rachel. With that, we'll get right into the episode.
Hello, my name is Rachel Berry, and I'm a senior double majoring in agricultural communications and international ag with a minor in event management at Iowa State University.
And hello, my name is Hannah Cook. I'm also a senior at Iowa State University studying ag communications with a minor in public relations. And our episode today will be covering the topic of animal welfare.
Within the agriculture field, there are several different viewpoints out in the world. We will be discussing the handling of animals regarding the definition of humane practices, misinformation, and other points of contention. Through this discussion, we hope to uncover where our differences in opinion lie and hopefully find some common ground. We also hope to discover the truth behind some myths broadcast to the world. While the truth may be hard to find, it is our mission as agricultural communicators to describe the facts whenever possible.
We will begin with our animal scientists, continue with an animal rights activist, and finish with a common consumer. Thank you for joining us. Could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Dr. Suzanne Millman, and I am a professor of animal welfare in the College of Veterinary Medicine. And my appointment is in the production animal medicine department. So I work very closely with farmers and farm animals, and I serve on advisory boards for United Egg Producers and previously for Iowa pork producers and also the Iowa Veterinary Medical Association. And I do a lot of research with cattle and chickens and pigs.
So what comes to your mind when you think about animal welfare?
That's a great question. And, honestly, animal welfare is my area of study. So in academia, we're very precise with our terminology. And so animal welfare is defined by the World Animal Health Organization as being a function of the animal itself. So an animal has welfare. And then I could be measuring that in terms of, is it able to perform natural behaviors, or is it functioning well and healthy, or is it feeling positive or negative emotions or affective states? So that would be all the things that we measure with animal welfare. But having said that, I'm also mindful that in common language, when we're talking about animal welfare, we're often talking about animal care and our responsibilities to animals, and people often use that broad term welfare in that way. So.
What is your perspective on the current livestock system?
In terms of animal welfare?
Yes.
Yeah, so livestock producers are really engaged in animal welfare and good animal care. And if we look back historically to understand why we've got intensive systems where the animals may have less freedom of movement, often those were designed to try to control disease and to be able to provide animal protection from the environment and good diets for growth and so on. So there were a lot of really good reasons and continue to be good reasons for why we've developed those types of housing systems. The difference is with animal welfare, we're weighing some of those factors that help the animal's functioning, so its growth and reproduction, but sometimes that's at the cost of the animal's ability to have agency and make choices and do the things that the animal wishes to do. So we see many in the industry are starting to revise husbandry systems, sometimes housing systems, to try to see how we can incorporate more broadly the animal's needs to be the animal.
So what steps would you then take to improve the animal agriculture industry?
I would say the first thing to do is have a conversation. So, as I said, there's good reasons why the industry has made the choices that it has. And I think the first question anyone concerned about animal agriculture has to ask themselves is, do you agree with this type of animal use? Because some people would say fundamentally they don't think that we should use animals for food. And that's a fair position. Philosophically, you can absolutely defend that position. If you do agree that animals should be used for food, then the questions would be, well, what do we want to change? And are there ways to get there without sacrificing many of the advances we've made? So animal welfare is one value that people are concerned about, but often they're concerned also about sustainability and the environment and rural livelihoods and so on. And so putting all of this together into a package, it can be complex. And that's why I would say, rather than me with my personal experiences coming in saying, this is what we need to change immediately, I prefer to have a conversation to say, these are the things that we're seeing, these are the concerns that are arising, how can we start to incorporate these? And, the producers in the industry, leaders themselves, will tell you the things that resonate the most with them, that they're interested in. And in my experience, you will get more action and you will get more sustained growth in directions that are helpful when we have a conversation rather than doing top-down, telling people what to do. Sometimes you have to tell them what to do, but on many of these issues, they are complex.
Do you feel consumers receive accurate information depicting humane animal handling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's potential for consumers to find a lot of information about how farm animals are raised, and they have to siphon through to figure out what is reputable and reliable information, and really the more interactions we have with rural communities, you'll find that the trust level is much higher, and so the information is there. The challenge for many people is for figuring out who to trust, and we've become so polarized. That's why those conversations are so important. And I think it really varies with the type of animal use, in my experience. So for some types of animal use, if you were to go onto the website, you would find the information very easily available to see what is being done, what are the standards of care, and what kind of accountability there is. With other ones, it's you have to do a little bit of digging. And with individual companies, again, there's that variation on what is known. So I think we've come such a far way from when we all lived in rural communities. We were very closely associated with agriculture, and now with that trust issue, what we see is some labels that are coming out that are verifiable. Someone's being on farm, and ensured that these practices are being performed and the animals are being treated well.
So on the topic of labeling, when you're shopping at the grocery store for your own foods, do you look for any certain qualities or labels in your animal products?
Yeah, I absolutely do. One thing is I would look for labels that are third-party verified. So there's a number of different types of labels out there. And so you have to be mindful and be an informed consumer that when you're looking at a product on the shelf and it's giving you some information that actually is meaningful, that there are standards behind that. So we have a number of programs that are verifiable. So there's the organic, there is the certified humane is one of the first animal welfare standards that came out and was verified. Individual companies might have a niche product brand, and that could be about a food quality. For example, Berkshire pork is a particular breed of pig and has particular qualities to its meat, and some of them are about husbandry standards. And I would say one of the things that some of the industries have done is really made a mainstream animal care verified label. So, for example, most of the pork products sold in the United States would be following the pork quality assurance guidelines for animal care, and then they would also have a third-party audit with the common swine industry audit. That would be somebody is out on the farm, they're verifying that these standards have been met. So, depending what consumers' level of comfort is and what they're specifically looking for, those would be the ways of ensuring that you're putting your money into a product that is truly giving what you think you're getting. And then for the consumers, it also depends on what their values are and their interests, and then their ability and willingness to pay.
You mentioned pork quality assurance. Could you elaborate more on what that is to someone who might be listening who's not heard of that before?
Yeah, sure can. So the pork industry has an educational program, pork quality assurance, that includes husbandry guidelines for pigs. On the beef side, it would be beef quality assurance, and then the dairy industry has farmers assuring responsible animal management, or the farm program. And within that, there would be guidelines in terms of humane handling of pigs, what would be appropriate treatment, what is not appropriate treatment. So you'd be using sort boards, for example. Those of us that are familiar with pigs, you'd be very familiar with it, but for the average person on the street, they wouldn't know that. And so you'd be using sort boards so that you're less likely to have to be shouting at pigs. You're going to be able to encourage them to move in ways that they're more likely to want to go on their own. It would also have information about the requirements for the type of facilities, so making sure that your flooring doesn't have damage to it, that the pig's feet aren't likely to get caught in the flooring, for example, and that the slats are not so wide that the pig's claws could get caught. There are also animal benchmarks to look at body condition score of the pigs and lameness, different types of veterinary and other problems that can occur normally with any population of animals. And you would know what percentage is appropriate that would be consistent with the industry standards and so on. So there's a lot of really good information. And on the pork quality assurance side, that's is the educational program of it. So there would be an advisor working with the farmer. They would be walking through the farm and seeing where the strengths and weaknesses are, and they would advise them on how to make improvements. That common swine industry audit is a third-party verification, so they would not be helping the farm. They would be removed from the farm. They wouldn't have a conflict of interest with the farm. They would just go and say, yes, these things have been met. They wouldn't tell the farmer how to fix it. So there's these different parts. One is kind of like the exam. If you're thinking it from a school standpoint, you have your teacher, which is the pork quality assurance advisor, and then the exam, and the examiner would be the common swine industry audit. So we have that on the beef side. There's a feedlot audit, and as I said, on dairy, there's the farm audit, and then with laying hens, there's the United Egg Producers. And those are the mainstream ones.
Okay.
So most of the foods, if you looked on your label, you would find those kinds of labels and certifications.
Thank you for that clarification.
Is there a resource available to someone looking for more information about animal welfare?
About animal welfare broadly, or farm animal welfare specifically?
Yeah.
Either, if you have both, whatever's
Yeah.
on your mind.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I encourage people to read very broadly. I am not afraid of critics and concerns being raised, and I think that's really important part of the conversation, right? So I think that going onto Google and looking up animal welfare or different types of animal uses and seeing what the concerns are, I think that's really helpful. And then take it the next step further to see, is that true? Is that representative of the whole industry or certain parts of the industry? What's being done? And so looking at a variety of sources to get a fully balanced, informed opinion. Because if you just look at one side, you might think there's never any problems at all, and that's not true either. That's not true with anything. So you need to read widely and be a skeptic, right? And really look things up. So it does take a little bit of searching. I think the real challenge for most people is that with anything, as you become more familiar with it, there's so many details and terminology that it's easy to present something in a very simplistic way. And so we can talk about animal agriculture that way, where I could give one particular example and say there's this one particular solution to it. But if we're looking broadly, even at things like climate change or anything that's in politics right now, there's a whole variety of solutions, and we need to have everything on the table to try to figure out how to make it better.
Anything else you would like to add relating to this topic?
I think what I would say is I'm glad people are asking questions about different types of animal use and really thinking that through ethically, because those are important ethical questions, and everybody has to find what is right for them, right? And so I think that's really important to do. And then also to recognize that your choice may not be the same as everybody else's choice. And not all of that is even about values. As I said, animal welfare is one value when we're making food choices, but there's also ability to pay, quite apart from willingness to pay. And there's access to different foods. In some communities, in some regions, it's really hard to find particular food products. And if you're a parent and you're juggling a lot of challenges in your life, you have to balance all these choices. So I'm interested in trying to find solutions that work. My focus is very much on the animals and trying to find ways of strengthening animal care in a way that keeps producers in business, is fair to animals, and that society can engage with.
Thank you so much for your time. I think that concludes our first interview.
Great.
Thank you.
And now we are joined by our second guest. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Crystal Jewell. I'm a graduate student in the Neuroscience Interdepartmental Program at Iowa State University. I'm also a science communicator. I'm a meditation instructor, and I'm sort of a wild food enthusiast.
So our first question for you is, what just comes to your mind when you think about animal welfare?
What comes to my mind when I think about animal welfare? Yeah, I'm usually questioning how much agency an animal has, and then whether or not the environment that the animal is in meets all of the animal's needs.
Mm-hmm. When you say agency, what do you mean by agency that the animal has?
Yeah, freedom to make their own decisions.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you had to define the humane treatment of animals, what parameters would you include?
Well, the first thing that I thought of was IACUC, which is sort of like our animal welfare agency when we're doing research with animals. They have a whole list of ethics that researchers have to adhere to. But yeah, if I had to choose like what parameters humane treatment of animals would consist of, it would probably be like just minimizing distress, and then also like keeping the animal in their natural environment.
Okay. What is your perspective on the current livestock system?
That it's largely a settler colonial system on Turtle Island. Yeah, because a lot of our livestock that are consumed, like cattle, chickens, sheep, they were all brought here from a different continent, right? So.
Could you elaborate more on what that would mean if they did come here from a different continent? Is that positive that we brought them over here, or do you think that animal agriculture should have stayed in those other countries and the U.S. should have focused on a different crop or product, or what makes you think that way?
My perspective is pretty negative, that it suffered a lot of consequences, right? So the dominant livestock that was here, like early 1800s, was the bison, right? There were millions of them. You could put your ear to the ground and you could hear them coming from around like the north part of like Kentucky, all the way to Iowa, for example. There were just so many of them. And then that dwindled down to like a couple hundred or something like that. And then like over time we saw this replacement with cattle. And so taking away the bison meant taking away the prairie. So there's multiple systems that suffered these consequences with the introduction of cattle as a replacement for the bison. So yeah.
Okay. Do you
Do you feel consumers receive accurate information depicting human-animal handling?
Probably not. Yeah, largely, right? We live in like a capitalistic society that really values like marketing the product and selling the product over like being transparent about like the conditions that animals are raised in. But maybe not across the board, right? Like I know there's a lot of agencies out there that work really hard to like reduce or increase transparency in some form or fashion. So,
what steps would you take to improve the animal agriculture industry then?
Putting more value on like our native animals as a food source, like reintroducing bison, reestablishing the prairie. So like that, the twofold benefits to reintroducing the prairie and the bison, and putting, I guess, like making it more known to the public about like different programs that states offer that connect like hunters to the public. We have a system here in Iowa where you can like sign up on a listserv, and I forget what the program is called, but I'm sure like a Google search would pull it up, where you can sign up on a listserv and get in contact with somebody who's like hunted a deer and has extra meat, and they're willing to just like give it to that person. So I think it would be nice, like, yeah, if we can make that more available to the masses, right?
So more hunting and free range animals rather than confined systems.
Yeah, for that reason, and for multiple reasons, right? Like, prion diseases are like a pretty big issue, right? And there's different theories as to where prion disease is developed. For anybody who's listening, prions are infectious proteins. We have no way of curing them. So if you develop a prion disease, then essentially what's going to happen is your brain will deteriorate. So it's a neurodegenerative disease, kind of like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease. Only it'll deteriorate potentially in youth. We saw that with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, with mad cow disease. So there's a couple of different theories as to where these prion diseases developed, and one of the theories for chronic wasting disease, which is the prion disease developing in cervids, so elk, moose, and deer, is from these confined quarters from private hunting grounds through nose-to-nose contact with the deer, since they didn't have that free-ranging ability that they usually have. So yeah, I think free-ranging would be a great step forward. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you personally are shopping at the grocery store, what qualities do you look for in your animal products? Any specific labels or anything?
Yeah, I exclusively shop for native meat, so bison, and I try to buy as locally as possible.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that creating a society where our meat is mostly all free range, bison, larger animals that take longer to produce, how would that affect the lower class people who can't afford such large red meat animals and rather shop more for chicken and pork and more affordable meats?
That's a really good question. I actually grew up in the projects, on food stamps, so yeah, that's a really great question. Probably those programs through the DNR that pair up hunters with people that are looking for meat, so it's a free resource to people that can't afford it.
Could you elaborate on your degree of study or your program of study and what you're kind of working on now, and if that relates to anything about animal welfare?
Yeah, totally. So what I study in graduate school is the connection between mindfulness meditation, improvisational music performance, and nothing to do with animal welfare. But in my free time, I do a lot of foraging and gardening, and I host plant walks, wild, edible, and medicinal plant walks here at community gardens like Mustard Seed Community Farm and at Ryman Gardens. So I also did a class project on prion diseases in one of my graduate classes because I wanted to learn more about it. So that's where all of that information comes from in regards to animal welfare. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
I think that's all. Yeah? That's all? Okay, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us.
Yeah.
We gained some insight into your opinions and beliefs, and that was amazing. Thank you so much.
And for our final guest, we have Becca. Welcome to our podcast. Thanks for being with us today. Could you please introduce yourself further?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Becca Cozy. I'm a business analytics student here at Iowa State. I'm a junior. I'm originally from St. Michael, Minnesota, so about 30 minutes out of the Twin Cities. I don't know much about the animal industry. All I know is what my roommate will say about her different classes and our other roommate, but other than that, I have very limited knowledge.
All right. So my first question for you is, what comes to mind when you think about animal welfare?
Primarily for me, it is treating animals in a humane way. Like preventing disease, providing food and good nutrition, and good housing and living conditions. Just overall letting them have a good standard of living.
If you had to define the humane treatment of animals, what parameters would that include?
I would say probably the exact same thing that I just mentioned for animal welfare, but also using care when handling the animals. I understand some force is needed for rounding up the animals and getting them where they need to go, but not using overt force, if that makes sense, only using what's needed. And again, just treating it as an animal that does experience pain and whatnot, so kind of being mindful of that.
So why do you include those specific stipulations when you think of animal welfare and humane treatment of animals?
I mean, just knowing, I'm not vegetarian or vegan, so obviously I am contributing to the commercialization of animal products. But I kind of just want to have peace of mind knowing that when I go use my milk for my morning coffee or eggs for breakfast or whatever, just kind of having the peace of mind that knowing these items were sourced in a good, ethical way. And one thing I did forget to mention is also I wish, babies were able to stay with their mothers longer, especially with dairy cows. I mean, I was told a little bit about the reasoning why they are separated, but still I kind of wish the, mother-child bonding was able to be longer.
So when you're shopping at the grocery store, for say, do you look for labels based on if they say vegan or non-GMO or cruelty-free or any of those labels?
Unfortunately, as a college student, I am choosing the cheapest option. I definitely wish, when I have the budget to get the more, quote-unquote, organic or more, better sourced ingredients or, grass-fed, but that's just not in my budget right now. And, the one thing that I do make sure is cruelty-free, which isn't grocery items, is, my beauty items. So
Yep.
So, I know of certain brands that do animal testing, and I don't like that, so I make sure to support the brands that are 100% transparent about being cruelty free.
So from what you know, as a whole, what is your perspective on our current livestock system?
Sort of how the animals are living?
Yes, when you think of the entire livestock system as a whole, do you think there are improvements that can be made? Do you like what you see, what you're told, or do you feel that it could be improved?
I think anything, it could be improved. Again, I don't know the in and out details. I'm just a regular consumer, but I just know the conditions are kind of cramped and not ideal, especially when you think of chickens. I've seen, videos of where it's just chickens on top of each other. But again, we live in a capitalistic society where profit is the main driver. So I know these big companies aren't going to spend the extra money to make better conditions. But again, so I understand it's not really possible with a given situation to have the 100% humane, ethical, but that's something we can always strive for.
I'm just curious where you find your main source of information when it comes to livestock or animal handling. Just where do you turn to for that information?
I'm not looking every day, the current state of animal living conditions, but I guess most young people, I spend a lot of time on TikTok. So if something is going viral, I guess for the wrong reasons with animal handling, that's kind of where I see it. The one main example that comes to mind, which I think was back in 2021, was Fairlife they had some of the dairy farms were having like kind of abusive practices towards their cows. So that's kind of when I think of what kind of made me more aware of what was going on was that incident. 'Cause like, you know, you hear these big brands and you think, oh, they should have decent standards of keeping their animals. But again, they can't control every farm, especially for such a large corporation. But sort of when the bad gets exposed, that's kind of where I find it.
Earlier, you had mentioned that large, big operations, big corporations, in your mind, seem to be more, or I guess I should say less ethical than smaller business operations. Why do you think that businesses with larger production happen to be more ethical? Is that things you've seen in the media? Is that just your own perceptions? What causes you to think that way?
I think a little mixture of what I've seen in the media and my own perception. I think, again, just we live in a capitalist society where making the most money, making the most profit is every business's main goal, even if they don't say it. They want to be able to give good profits and returns to their stakeholders. This is my business student coming out, but corporations are driven to make the most profit. So if they're able to cut costs in any way, they're going to cut those costs. So if they can put more livestock in smaller spaces, they're going to do it. And I guess I don't know much facts about the smaller farms or like say family farms, like, you know, people who sell their eggs at a stand or whatever. But I think primarily my perception is those larger corporations don't want to spend the extra dollar to have better treatment.
Yeah. And do you think that there should be any laws in place when it comes to ethical, or any more laws in place when it comes to ethical treatment of animals, animal well-being? And if so, do you think that there needs to be a divide between what laws affect large businesses and small businesses if small businesses can't afford to make certain accommodations? Or what's your opinions on that?
I don't have much knowledge about the law, so whatever I'm going to say is not going to be the most educated. I don't know the facts, so I just want to preface that. I guess there should be more kind of laws in place just to protect the welfare of animals. But I guess also maybe the laws are enough if we aren't hearing about it often.
Do you feel that consumers receive accurate information depicting humane animal handling?
I think maybe if they're to go out and seek it, sure, but I think it's not like readily made available, if that makes sense. Or again, like I feel like Fairlife prided themselves on those good practices, but then got exposed through those videos of inhumane practices. So I guess, again, I'd have to look into it more, but I think of also me having to look into it kind of could make the argument like it's not readily available and not being shown or easily shown to the consumer.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I have one final question for you. How can information about animal welfare be effectively communicated to consumers like yourself?
I'd say the easiest way is to utilize packaging. That's what the consumer sees first when they look at these products. So, I mean, one thing I'm thinking about right now is I go to Quick Trip, or I guess Quick Star, to get my milk. They'll say on their packaging, like, oh, these are from small farms across the state of Wisconsin. So kind of on that train of thought, like, companies have the ability to put that information on their packaging, so kind of give a little insight to what their practices are. And again, you know, they can't really lie about that because of different advertising laws. And more so, I think if they put their website on it, have like, instead of trying to be hidden away on their website, it should be something that's like you can easily click on the front page to kind of see what their practices and standards are.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
I think we are done with our final interview.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you to our guests for being with us today and sharing their points of view. I hope that we were able to give some clear perspectives regarding the agriculture industry, specifically when discussing the handling of livestock. Some main points to consider are quality assurance standards, the future of the wild game animal industry, and the information available to common consumers. Now that we have more information on this topic that affects producers and consumers alike, I encourage everyone listening to be proactive by digging deeper into these perspectives to come up with educated conclusions. Hopefully, our actions can change the agriculture industry for the better.
Thank you so much to Hannah and Rachel and the wonderful guests that they brought on today to provide us with some really unique perspectives related to animal welfare. That's why I really like doing this podcast. I love hearing new perspectives and learning new things from the students and all of our guests. Thank you again to everyone for this wonderful episode today, and we'll catch you next time on CAP. To email us with any comments, questions, or concerns, please send us an email at contemporary@iastate.edu.